Here we are with another video on the gut-brain connection. Today's topic is core concept number 2, the autonomic nervous system. This is part 2 of a 3-part series on understanding the gut-brain connection through 3 core concepts. How this series of 3 videos works is that we'll start with the more broad and theoretical with the first core concept, which was the last video, the biopsychosocial model. And that's a useful perspective to understand the bigger picture of your GI disorder. And then moving to the more specific and practical, we have today's topic, which is core concept number 2, the nervous system, specifically a part of the nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. And then we narrow down even more to the specific and practical in the next video with the third core concept. And then finally, this video series will link up to another 3-part series, which will help explain the 3 proven tools proven by research to be reliably helpful for people with chronic GI conditions. So we're starting with these 3 core concepts first before we get to the tools, because I want to give you a good understanding of some of the foundational concepts so that later when I give you an overview of what the tools are and how they work, you'll at least have some footing to understand why focusing on your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors has an effect on your GI system. And when you have the understanding of these 3 core concepts, you'll be better able to understand the tools. The information in this video is not intended for medical or mental health diagnosis. It's not a form of medical or mental health treatment. It's also not a substitute for treatment. This is for educational purposes only. In the last video on the biopsychosocial model, we went through the different ways in which each of these parts of you can become dysregulated and how that can play a part in a chronic digestive issue. The reality is that chronic medical disorders are very complicated webs of interaction that involve much more than just your organs and your tissues. And so when you zoom out and you see that the disease process involves these main areas of your life, your biology, your psychology, your social interactions, and that each of these areas is connected to each other, it gets pretty complicated quickly. So this is one of the reasons why our second core concept is a useful one. It really lets us simplify this whole web down. So in this chart, there's one place in the center where all these main areas of your life overlap, and that is where the nervous system lives. The nervous system is the master controller of your body, your mind, and how you connect with other people. It's kind of like the Kevin Bacon of the body, like everything is connected to the nervous system one way or the other. So if any of your biology or your psychology or social elements of your life are chronically out of balance, it will eventually bring your nervous system out of balance as well. So it makes sense for us to focus on the nervous system because it gives us a much more small and manageable target to focus on. As we went through before, there's some core underlying factors or processes that are very common in chronic GI conditions. There's the intestinal permeability factor, which is the loss of the integrity of the digestive wall or digestive barrier that can cause something like leaky gut. Dysbiosis is the imbalance of the microbiome or microbiota, which is the all the bacterial communities within our digestive tract. Motility impairment is the imbalance of the movement through the digestive tract of food and gases. Visceral hypersensitivity, we went more in depth last time, more than the other ones, which is the sensitization of the nerves in the GI tract that can cause its own kind of vicious cycle and certainly can create a lot of not only pain but amplify the anxiety that can go with these conditions. And then we have the inflammation pathway, which certainly can be its own vicious cycle. And then finally, we have the gut-brain dysregulation process. There's a lot of information available about how most of these underlying factors are related to chronic GI symptoms and possible changes you can make with your diet or medication or supplements. And there's much less information available about this last factor, the gut-brain dysregulation. So I'm hoping there's potential low-hanging fruit for you here, and that's where we're going to focus. So the main theme of this three-part series is the gut-brain connection and how dysregulation in the gut-brain connection can often be a part of the puzzle of a chronic health or chronic GI condition specifically. So this topic is huge in current research for all types of GI disorders, and it's a big part of functional GI disorders or disorders of the gut-brain interaction, to say it more formally. And it's very likely a significant factor for structural disorders as well, something like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's. So here's my list of key concepts that will break down this big topic of the gut-brain dysregulation down into bite-sized chunks. So by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of what all these terms mean and why they might be relevant for you. So I'm going to have the goal of having this sentence make sense to you by the end of this video. Low vagal tone, a marker of autonomic dysregulation, is observed in functional digestive disorders and inflammatory bowel diseases. So this is a statement taken from a research paper, and it has research evidence to support it. So the first place to start to understand this more clearly is what I mean when I say the nervous system. Let's start with the basics of the nervous system. I'm going to give you a bunch of terminology here. Please do not feel like you need to remember all these terms. The important ones I'll keep coming back to. The autonomic nervous system on the bottom right there, that's where we're going to focus today, but I just want to give you some context of where that fits within the bigger picture of things. So the nervous system is made of two parts. We have the central nervous system on the left and then the peripheral nervous system on the right. The central nervous system is made of your brain and your spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is all the nerves that are outside of the brain and the spinal cord. And so that peripheral nervous system is broken down further into two parts. There's the somatic and the autonomic. So the first part, the somatic nervous system, that's what controls your voluntary movements of your muscles. So if you move your head right now, or if you move your hand to swipe your phone or control your mouse, that's your somatic nervous system doing its thing. And then the second part is the autonomic nervous system. This is where we're going to focus. So let's zoom into that right now. So autonomic, think automatic or subconscious. The autonomic nervous system regulates a lot of the processes in the body that are involuntary or automatic. They don't need your effort to happen. So if you move your hand or your head, those are voluntary and they're under your control. Things like your breathing, your heartbeat, your digestion, those are all most of the time involuntary and automatic. They just happen in the background so that they're kind of doing their own thing and kind of keeping you alive. You don't have to think about it. So the autonomic nervous system is made of three parts that all work together in a kind of a dance that keeps all the systems in your body working smoothly. So the first part here, the sympathetic branch, you can think of that as the gas pedal of the brain. It's the mechanism the brain uses to take control when we need to be activated. When it's used in a regulated way, it helps us to keep safe. When we're in danger or dysregulated, it activates the fight or flight response. And the second part here is the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. You can think of this as the brake pedal of the brain. It's the mechanism the brain uses to help influence the body to slow down and to run at a sustainable pace. When it's used in a regulated way, it helps us to calm down, to drop our guard, engage with other people, to rest, and to restore. It's called the rest and digest response when that's activated. And then the third part is the enteric nervous system. This is the digestive tract that has its own enormous amount of nerves within it, to the point that it's considered its own separate branch of the nervous system. If you've ever heard of the phrase, the second brain in your gut, this is what that phrase is pointing to. Okay, so the enteric nervous system, this is a fascinating topic. It's called the second brain because it's a mesh of millions and millions of neurons that are all spread out along the lining of your digestive tract, starting with in your mouth and all the way through your body to your anus. And so this separate branch of the nervous system lives in your gut, and it controls all the organs that play a part of the complex dance of digesting food. So to give you a sense of how many nerves we're talking about, if you were to take all the nerves in your spine and lay them down in your digestive tract, in your intestines, let's say, that's exactly what this is like, except for the fact that there's actually more nerves in your digestive system than there are in your spine. So it's a pretty fascinating topic. We're really not going to touch on it much, but I just want you to know that this is something to be aware of because it plays into the bigger picture of things. So these are the three main parts: the sympathetic nervous system, the brain's gas pedal; the parasympathetic nervous system, the brake pedal of the brain; and then the enteric nervous system, a whole separate branch of the nervous system dedicated specifically to the digestive system. So when you see this image on the left, which I use a lot in here in these videos, this is where these three parts fit in. So that covers the autonomic nervous system and the enteric nervous system. Let's talk about autonomic dysregulation and the vagus nerve. Stress is a big factor for chronic GI conditions. Chronic stress can cause dysregulation, and because the gut and brain are so connected, dysregulation in one appears to be dysregulated in the other. So one big factor of what keeps this dysregulation going is what's called autonomic dysregulation. To understand what autonomic dysregulation is, we want to see how the gas and the brake of our nervous system are connected. The gas and the brake are meant to be used to keep each other in balance. They're connected together like a seesaw. When one comes up, the other one goes down. The gas pedal of the sympathetic nervous system is controlled by our survival instincts to be alert to danger, to protect ourselves by becoming activated. It's really useful to be stressed when there's danger present, right? It's adaptive or an intelligent use of the stress response. And that is kept in balance by the brake pedal of the parasympathetic nervous system. It helps us to calm down, to regulate, to rest, restore, and important for you and I, to digest. So that means when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, your parasympathetic nervous system gets deactivated. And then also, of course, the same in reverse. When your nervous system detects a threat and puts you into a defensive type mode, it shuts down what's not essential for your short-term survival, all the things that are regulated by the parasympathetic. So your immune system, your reproductive system, your digestive system, those get down-regulated when your sympathetic nervous system gets up-regulated. When there's a threat or a sense that there's a lack of safety, that's what gets prioritized, that's what gets deprioritized. So in short, when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, your ability to rest and to digest gets impaired. This is what it looks like when your nervous system is in a healthy state. And this is what it looks like if that stress response becomes chronic. When there's chronic stress, maybe from a difficult life circumstance or a trauma, stress from a chronic health condition, or maybe stress from a mental health condition, it can make it so the balance between the two is lost. The balance between the gas and the brake is lost. And that is autonomic dysregulation. Autonomic dysregulation is a chronic lack of balance between these two core components of your nervous system. The nervous system has been altered, it's been compromised so that it's chronically shifted to one side rather than balanced in the middle where that green dot is. People with GI disorders most often have an overly active or overly sensitive sympathetic nervous system, like in this image. The shift to the left there to that yellow dot is a type of dysregulation called sympathetic dominance. You don't need to know that term, but might be useful. Just put it out there on your radar. The gas pedal, it's kind of dominating the show. It's not letting the brake pedal do its job. So I really hope you can see the importance of this, because this connection is like a seesaw. If you have chronically oversensitive or overly active sympathetic nervous system, that means your body's ability to use the brake is chronically blocked. So without proper access to that brake pedal, it's much harder for your body to get the signals of safety in order to properly slow down and to digest optimally. So the main thing to take from this slide here is that autonomic dysregulation means a chronic lack of balance in your autonomic nervous system. And as we've noted before in these videos, because the gut and the brain are so connected, dysregulation in one appears to be connected to dysregulation in the other. Here is a diagram of how the two branches of your nervous system affect the systems and the organs of your body. So given the seesaw connection, these are often opposite effects. For example, on the left side, your parasympathetic nervous system slows the beating of your heart, while the sympathetic nervous system on the right side increases your heartbeat. The parasympathetic nervous system on the left side stimulates digestive activity. On the right side, the sympathetic nervous system inhibits digestive activity. So the main reason I'm showing you this diagram in particular is to point out how many nerves there are on the right side, the sympathetic side. Use a little fancy thing right here. Check out how many nerves there are there. I mean, that's a lot of nerve connections all splayed out through a lot of different nerves. And then check out the parasympathetic side. Notice that a lot of these connections are all coming through one main pathway here. And that one nerve pathway, that's called the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the main nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system. This one nerve is the core communication pathway for your brain to regulate many of your autonomic functions of your body, like your breathing, your heart rate, your digestion. The word vagus comes from a Latin root meaning wanderer, and it fits because this very long nerve starts in your brainstem. It goes up into your face and your head, but also comes down into your body and wanders through the neck and through the chest and the abdomen, connecting all these major organ systems. What's most important for us is that the vagus nerve is a direct link from the gut to the brain and the brain to the gut. And there are multiple pathways that the gut and brain communicate with each other, but through the nervous system is really the main way. So when we say the gut and brain have a strong connection, this is where that is happening. So you could oversimplify things in a little bit of a way here. You could say that the gut-brain connection is the vagus nerve. Now that we've talked about the vagus nerve some and put that on the map, let's move to our final concept, vagal tone. Vagal tone is a measurement of how well the vagus nerve is working. When the balance between the gas and the brake is lost, and we have autonomic dysregulation, this means there's a shift to the left, which inhibits or blocks that brake pedal. And the brake pedal is controlled by the vagus nerve. So how well the vagus nerve is working is a good indication of how much imbalance there is. Currently, the best measurement of vagal tone is a measurement called heart rate variability, or HRV for short. And if you have one of those fancy smartwatches or maybe like a newer Fitbit, it's very likely tracking your HRV. And HRV is a really fascinating topic. I went pretty deep on it this last year, but that's a whole nother topic for another video. A lot of really practical, useful things to explore with HRV. You'll see in some of the research that's attached to this video uses HRV in the studies to measure dysregulation. So that might be a useful thing to check out if you have one of those fancy devices. One way to understand this idea of vagal tone is to think of your muscles. If this were your biceps here on the screen, your bicep muscle, and you worked it out regularly, it would be nice and toned. meaning that at rest it wouldn't be loose and flaccid, but at the same time it wouldn't be all tight and constricted. Instead, it would be toned. It would be firm and yet flexible at the same time. A healthy toned muscle can contract fully, but it can also release fully. So in some ways, your nerves are similar. When you're young and you're healthy, your nerves naturally have a strong tone, which means they're able to send a clear, strong signal. When your nervous system is exposed to long periods of mental, physical, or medical stress, the vagus nerve can lose its strength, and this is called low vagal tone. Instead of a healthy, strong nerve signal, this nerve signal is now weak. And when you have a weak signal on your cell phone, the conversation is choppy and maybe you miss parts of what's being said. And that's a good way to think about what's happening with low nerve tone. Important information gets lost. It creates the potential for an imbalance. And it's this metric, vagal tone, that's been found in many research studies to be associated with many medical conditions. This includes both functional and structural GI disorders, as well as anxiety and depression. And for you people listening to this with inflammatory conditions, low vagal tone also appears to be associated with chronic inflammation as well. So there's been medical research done where devices are used to electrically stimulate the vagus nerve, either through an implanted device or through the skin. And they tend to show improvements in GI, cardiovascular, and immune disorders, autoimmune disorders as well. So that covers all the key concepts. Let's do a quick final review here. The autonomic nervous system is the branch of your nervous system that regulates a lot of processes in the body that are involuntary and automatic, which includes digestion. It's made of the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the enteric nervous system, which is the second brain in your gut. A loss of balance between the gas and the brake is called autonomic dysregulation. The vagus nerve is the main nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system and the place where much of the gut-brain connection happens. Vagal tone is a measurement of how well the vagus nerve is working. When we have autonomic dysregulation, it often leads to low vagal tone. So that fleshes out all these major concepts here. So let's go back to that sentence that's filled with jargon. Low vagal tone, a marker of autonomic dysregulation, is observed in functional digestive disorders and inflammatory bowel diseases. So I hope these concepts and this sentence not only make sense, but you have some understanding of why they matter if you have a chronic GI condition. And I should say, if you have a disorder that's not fitting in those two categories, functional or inflammatory, there's a good chance it's still applying here. So before we end, I just want to make it clear that it appears to be that autonomic dysregulation is a factor for most chronic GI conditions, but there's just so much we don't know yet. Science is a very slow process. And now that we have these concepts explained, you might be wondering, what do these concepts look like on a practical level? What are the signs of autonomic dysregulation? How do I know if this is happening for me? The final core concept in this series will be the most specific and practical of the three, and a lot of these types of details will be fleshed out in the next video.